I would like to introduce our first speaker today, Dr. David Taylor. Dr. Taylor earned his BA from the University of Chicago, MA from the State University of New York, Binghamton, and PhD in botany from the University of Connecticut. He did a postdoc at Yale University. Over his career, he has published approximately 40 articles, and so you've got something to shoot for. It's a sort of a bit more mid-career, okay? Not any pressure, okay. He's received over $100,000 in grants. His research program is focused on flowering plant evolution, and he has published on fossils. His research has taken him to 6 continents for international conferences and field work. He shares his up-to-date knowledge on flowering plant evolution with the students in his classes. The title of Dr. Taylor's presentation is Looking for the First Flowering Plants, My Travel as a Researcher.
Well, when I was told the timing for my talk here, I said, so I am going to delay all of you to lunch. So I figured that I'd try to make it somewhat interesting, not just for the scientific view, but also for those of you who maybe aren't in the sciences, and that's why I decided to include part of my travels as well. So what I'm going to do is give you an overview of the development of my research program that's now, I hate to say, over 20 years, along with the various continents and places that I've actually visited along the way. So to give context, I have to start with this pretty picture here. So when I started doing research on the first flowering plants, the ongoing idea of what they were was this, okay? And I point out some characteristics on it. Yeah, here it is. Basically what we have is a woody plant. You can see that there's bark along the edges here. The leaves are elongate here, they have a mid-vein here, and the flowers, you can see, are large in size, and that they have many parts with many, in this case, fruits as well. And that theory actually has been around for over 100 years. So when I went to Yale as a postdoc, I'd been working on fossil flowers that were about 50 million years old. My mentor there, Leo Hickey, was an expert on fossil leaves. And as we sat around the lab talking about it, we kept saying, this doesn't seem right. One of the problems is we weren't finding any early fossils. Yet if they're big fossils, we should be able to find them. And second of all, the leaf morphology wasn't what the earliest leaves looked like. So sitting in the lab, we developed a second idea, and the idea that we later then named the herbaceous origin hypothesis. So instead, what we have is a plant that's an herb. You can see the stems are green. Maybe it made up to a meter high, but basically an herb. The leaves, you can see, are clearly different. You can see there's multiple veins coming out of where the stem of the leaf is. And this is actually an inflorescence made up of thousands of flowers. So we're talking about tiny as opposed to large. So what that allowed us to do is to change our search image. So if when you go out into the field and you're looking for something, if you're looking for something big, you're going to look differently than if you're looking for something small. So what we did is, we don't have any money to go out in the field yet. You have to, with funding, actually have some evidence. So what we started doing was looking through books. And so we were going through these floras, and in this flora here was this plant. Suddenly we said, hey, it was only 2 inches in size, but we said, that's our first flowering plant. And it was here. What continent? Australia. I hope all of you can recognize the cute koala here. But being a botanist, I have to include the plants as well. So what's the dominant plant in Australia? Eucalyptus, exactly. These are actually pictures that I took recently when I was at a conference down in Melbourne, right near where this fossil locality was, which is in Victoria. And so the plant that we actually found is this one here, named the Kumara Plant. Some of you who drink wine may be familiar with the Kumara Valley, spelled with a C. It's an Aboriginal name that you may know. But anyway, so here's the plant. Here's basically this. Come on, wake up. Yep, there we go. There's the stem of the plant. Here's the stem of the leaf. Look at the venation here, multiple veins there. This is an inflorescence here, and inside the inflorescence are these very tiny fruits, actually subtended by modified leaves, so we know actually these are many simple flowers. So, made a hypothesis, tested it, support for it. So pretty cool, okay? And actually, we published this in the journal Science, and it got a lot of press, okay? And it was very exciting. The fun part is a couple of years later, it was designated by the Book of Guinness Records as the oldest flower for about 5 or 6 years. But the real thing is it changed the search image. And as a result, suddenly everybody was finding flowers because they were looking for small flowers, okay? So it really changed the concept there. But one test on a hypothesis or a theory is not enough. So you need to continue to do that. The second thing that was going on simultaneously with my fossil work were work by people working on living flowers and looking at their relationships based on DNA. And so they came to the result of phylogenetic analysis that this plant and this group of plants, this plant being Ambarella, was at the bottom of the evolutionary tree of living angiosperms, and then this plant was the next group there, which you know as the water lilies. And this is actually one of the groups of water lilies, the cobomboid or water shield water lilies. And if we look at the morphology, again, tiny flowers, that fits. Yet this tends to be a little more shrubby than we thought might be ancestral, but not completely inconsistent. And also the base of the leaves actually show multiple veins, although they do have a strong mid vein as well. Here you can see multiple veins coming out of where the stem is attached here in the water lilies and the small flowers as well. So this allowed us to have another search image as well. So what are you going to do? Let's find more fossils. What we knew from pollen is that the oldest flowering plants were found along the paleoequator. And at that time, along the equator was South America and Northern Africa. So here it is in the 90s, and I'm thinking of traveling to Colombia, Venezuela, the Middle East, okay? All very nice, stable places that way. So I actually decided Colombia wasn't so good because that time they were basically the revolutionaries were kidnapping basically anybody from the United States. So I said, that's probably not them. So instead I picked the Middle East, being a little safer. And I ended up going to this place. What country? This is Petra in the country of Jordan, exactly. So actually I flew into Israel, took a cab across the West Bank, went off the King Hussein Bridge, and then took a taxi to Amman, okay? I wouldn't try that today, actually. But it was a fascinating experience to be in the Middle East. Actually, I was during Ramadan as well. So we actually didn't collect the fossils in Petra, which would be really sacrilegious, as it's an important archaeological site. So where we actually collected them was in a town called Mahas, which is not far from Amman in central northern Jordan. And what Mahas has is a series of clay mines in which they collect clay. And what do you make out of clay? Well, those of our artists know that you make pots and things like that. One of the most common things are flower pots, and what's even more common is cat litter. I don't know how many millions of plant fossils are found in cat litter around the world. So in any case, we went in here, and when we went to this locality, a colleague of mine was part of our team, had already looked for pollen. We knew flowering plants were there, but no flowering plants have been described from this period, which is the Albion for those geologists, which is 100 million years old for everybody else. So we knew anything we found was going to be the oldest for the African plate, actually. So it was sort of neat. We just had to find something. And these are my research assistants. This is Ali Mahad. He was a graduate student at the University of Amman, part of my Jordanian team. This is Luann Hobson, who is a graduate of the biology program, and she's an emergency physician down in Baton Rouge at this time. But again, showing undergraduate research, how it can lead anywhere. So there they are doing what we typically do, sitting around cracking open rocks. And within 6 hours on the first day, this is what we found. And looking at that, what does that sort of look like? It sort of looks like a water lily. In fact, that was my conclusion right there in the field. That's not enough, though, just because you matched it up. How old did we say it was? 100 million years old, and evolution is occurring since that time. So we need to do a careful morphological analysis before we can conclude, in fact, it was a water lily. What was neat is we had some other characteristics. Here's a not as well-preserved leaf. Here's the stem of the leaf. Here's the stem of the plant, and actually a branch of the plant here. And that was an important characteristic because you see it looks like there's 3 pieces attached at a single spot, or a single node for those of you who are botanists. So we did all of that analysis. We then did an analysis of living water lilies and did a phylogenetic analysis that is shown here. Several talks I know during this session have used phylogenetic analysis. Just to remind you, this is the bottom of the tree. This is the top of the tree. Those are here, originated earlier than those things up here. Basically, we have two major groups. These are the main water lilies, okay, that most of people, the really showy things, including Victoria, that has leaves that are 2 meters in size. Down here are the water shields, okay? And so when we put in the fossil, it shows that it belongs to the water shields, just like it looks like the living water shields here, having that same branching pattern that we see. So we have strong evidence that, in fact, it belongs in this group of water lilies, but it is actually in the ancestral bottom of this tree. So it's really neat. So we had evidence of what this water lily was related to. So from there it was, where now? At that time, there was a country where a lot of new fossils were coming out of. And I had several postdocs, and I got invited to go to this country, which is China. Anybody, where are we? Tiananmen Square, exactly. Okay, a very famous place. And what's behind here? The Forbidden City, okay? So we obviously, when we're in Beijing, and what is this up here? It's called blue sky. If you go to Beijing, you won't see that anymore, okay? This is back roughly 10 years ago when the pollution wasn't as bad. Here's my research group. This is Dr. Li, who is was a postdoc here, taught here, and then got a job as a professor at Frostburg State. One of his graduate students. Here's Luann again, and then a colleague who's a botanist who came along also to do research, Dr. Bo. And then Dr. Chi is our Chinese colleague, and he actually works here in the Chinese Academy of Geological Sciences. So that's his job. So that was our team, and we headed out to Inner Mongolia and actually to Liaoning province in China. So that's where our research group there. There's Luann doing her field work. Basically, I get to hack open rocks. She gets to record them, wrap them up, and everything like that. And that's typical fossil locality. And coming out of this project was this plant here. Now, we'll go back to that original plant. As I said, it was only 2 inches in size, but the base was broken off. So somebody could say, how do you know it wasn't the top of a tree? Well, I couldn't say that for sure. It was consistent with our model, but we needed the whole plant. This gave us something. So right here, you can see this is a stem here, and these are adventitious roots coming off of here. So this is actually an underground stem. And then here are the above ground parts. You can't see the leaves so well here, but I'll show them later. And then here are the reproductive organs. And this is about 18 centimeters in size, so about 1 foot in size. So we know that at least this one is certainly an herb. Anybody want to guess where it was preserved in? Do you see anything else in there? What's down here? It's a fish, yeah, okay, a fossilized fish. So the evidence is that there was volcanism in the area. You've got these massive ash falls that killed everything in the pond, as well as this plant that we think was growing in the pond as well. Really great preservation that way. So this is basically what we think at this time is one of the oldest flowering plants, if not the oldest based on geological evidence. Here are the leaves. They had these dissected leaves, again branching down to multiple branch points. Here is the reproductive organs. Superficially, this looks like that first model of the big flower one. But as we dissected this, so here's a fruit, here are the seeds in here, we found this one right here, and it's blown up over here. Here's a fruit coming down, it's attached here. And then here's the male organ, the stamen. So in fact, these are simple flowers grouped together. Some of them unisexual, some of them bisexual. Here's a bisexual, a unisexual male flower. So not flowers that we find today, but in fact these sort of transitional flowers, where you're not you're a flower, but you have male and female organs. Again, consistent with the small flower idea. Here's a reconstruction that shows it quite nicely with the fish swimming around and how we think it probably grew. So now I'm going to share, we're almost to the end, you can wake up now. my continued work on the water lilies. So we had looked at, and I published papers on 2 different water lilies from 100 million years ago. I got interested in wondering if younger water lilies might, in fact, okay, be closer related to the individual species that are around today. So that's what we were interested in. And that took me here. Now this is going to take a little work. Let's start. What continent? Europe. Bingo. Okay, cathedral typical. Let's see how good you are. Germany. Excellent. Okay, anybody get the city? Cologne. Exactly. See, I knew this group could answer these questions. So this is the Cathedral of Cologne. Where I was doing my research was with a colleague at University of Bonn, which is just a short ride down there. Here's the collecting site of Rot, Germany. As you notice, in Germany and elsewhere in Europe, you can have a mine right next to where people live, okay? So we're hacking fossils from here. And here's the fossil that we found, another water lily. So this is basically the same tree you had before. Here's the one that we described, the water shield from Jordan, okay? And what we did is put in this unnamed fossil, and what we found, it was related to this group within Nymphaea, this other group of water lilies. In addition, we took all the best described fossils that we could find and put them in as well. So you can see that there was a large variety of fossils living at that time. Older fossils, and that these different groups were represented in time. But what's fascinating is even this fossil that's from the Oligocene, so about 35 million years ago, doesn't group with any of the living species. It's still in the stem, okay, suggesting it may be a transitional form. And that's the first time anybody's actually been able to show, because they had enough fossils to actually show that. So you, only about, let's say about 50 other people know of this. So you have this information that no one else knows about. So that's sort of fun. So just ending on that, so where am I going next, okay? I hope to get back into the tropics to continue to look for older fossil plants, because that's where I think we have our best chance to find the oldest ones. In a couple of years, I'll be heading into Brazil, and while I'm there, I'm hoping in the Andes that we might find some localities that might help us that way. So thank you very much. Congratulations on all your presentations, and I hope they lead in the future to new fun and travel. So thanks.
That was great. Let's give him another round. So you didn't know that research and creative work could actually take you out of the country, right? Tell me it's fun. Okay, now for, let's see, sort of the second level event that you're interested in, lunch. What I want you to do is wait. We're going to release each of the tables.